What would happen if one day, out of nowhere, you artificially evolve from a mere mortal to an almost divine being, capable of breaking the laws of matter and time? The movie Lucy is more than just Scarlett Johansson beating up bad guys. It's about a deeper, more transcendent message that you probably missed. A billion years ago, life was given upon Earth, but from that moment, a great mystery remained. What to do with it? The development of intelligence would be a slow process, marked by waiting and gradual evolution. Currently, Lucy was with her date, Richard. He, anxious and pressed for time, asked her to deliver a briefcase in his place. He promised her $500 in return, assuring her that she only had to take it to Mr. Yang. Lucy, suspicious, asked what was in it. Richard, avoiding her questions, claimed he didn't know and that it was probably just some papers. The offer seemed absurd to her. Who would pay such a sum for unimportant documents? When she refused, Richard handcuffed the briefcase to Lucy's wrist. He explained that only Mr. Yang had the key and the combination to open it. She protested, but she wouldn't budge. Disgusted and with no other option, Lucy headed to the indicated building. As Lucy walks, the film alternates with cuts of mouse approaching a mousetrap. She's being set in a trap. The receptionist began questioning her. Who had sent her? What was she carrying? And who she was on behalf of? Lucy mentioned Richard, but the man said he didn't know anyone by that name. He informed the boss of her presence. Suddenly, we see something completely different. A cheetah chasing an antelope across the African savanna. Predator and prey. The law of the jungle in its purest form. Most of us assume it's just an obvious visual metaphor. Lucy is the prey. The criminals are the predators. But look at what Lucy is wearing in those opening scenes. A leopard print jacket. Lucy still belongs to that animal world we're seeing in parallel. She's part of the realm where beings devour one another, where survival depends on brute force and primal cunning. But with her jacket, the film is letting us know that she's going to become the prey to predator. Richard was observing the scene, but a gunshot took his life instantly. Lucy was restrained by the man and taken to the boss's office. There, she saw two bloodied bodies on the floor, a pool of blood spreading beneath them. The shock made her vomit. Mr. Yang appeared wearing protective goggles, his hands covered in blood, which an assistant washed for him. Lucy, desperate, begged them not to cut up her hand and asked for a translator. When she spoke to her, she explained that she knew nothing about the briefcase, that Richard had given it to her, and that she had no connection to the matter. Yang, dissatisfied, wrote the number 140 on a piece of paper and slipped it towards her. The translator explained that it wasn't the combination and that the boss wanted her to open it. Lucy hesitated, as it could have been something that could explode. The boss replied that he didn't trust Richard. Lucy felt the pressure and, trembling, entered the combination. Inside, she found bags containing a blue substance or stones that she found repulsive. Young took a plastic tube, extracted a fragment, and held it up to a seriously injured man who'd been brought into the room. They forced him to inhale the substance. After a few seconds, the man lost control and began to laugh frantically and uncontrollably. Some guards laughed, but stopped when they received a cold stare from the boss. Without warning, Yang drew his weapon and shot the man in the head. Blood splattered on Lucy's face and clothes, leaving her paralyzed with shock. The body was removed, and the young woman stood alone facing the boss, who approached her and told her he had a job for her. Her beauty is the perfect cheese for the mob's trap. Lucy, trembling, replied that she wasn't interested, but she could say more. The head of security struck her, knocking her unconscious. Meanwhile, at a university, a scientist was explaining to an audience the first forms of intelligence would have taken hundreds of thousands of years to manifest. He explained that with a single neuron, a being can be alive. With two, it can move. And once movement is acquired, the possibilities can be infinite. He concluded by pointing out that most animal species only use between 3% and 5% of their brain capacity. It wasn't until humans reached the top of the food chain that the world had species capable of employing a larger portion of its brain capacity, reaching an average usage of 10%. Today, roads, armies, robots, transportation, satellites, and other achievements have been invented since the discovery of fire. Humanity has forged its evolution. The scientists pointed out the only being that surpasses humans in percentage of a brain is the dolphin, which uses up to 20% of its brain to develop an echolocation system more precise than any human sonar. The dolphin did not invent the sonar. It developed. Bringing up a philosophical question. People tend to focus more on having than on being. Let's talk for a second about what the film suggests regarding using 100% of the brain. As many of you know, science has already debunked this. If we think about it, if we lost 90% of our brain, could we continue functioning in the same way? The answer is clearly no. But if we interpret this premise and talk about it from the level of consciousness, things start to make more sense. It turns out, and science knows this too, that human beings live at a low level of consciousness. That way, it would make a lot of sense that we only operate at 10% consciousness, and that we concentrate more on having instead of being, as the professor suggested. But what will happen when we reach 100% consciousness? Lucy awoke in a hotel room with few clothes and wounded, noticing an incision in her stomach. She didn't understand what had happened. The head of security entered, threw some clothes at her, and ordered her to get dressed. She was taken to the boss in a luxurious office. She asked about the wound, and a man explained that it was a small cut to insert a package intended to be transported internally. He assured her there would be a great interest in Europe in testing the new product called CPH4. Other men in the same situation were brought in. The boss had passports and plane tickets ready, with various destinations, assuring them that they will arrive in their countries within 24 hours, where the drugs will be extracted and would be released. He warned that if they ditched the plan or went to the authorities, they knew their family's information. For some reason, Mr. Yang showed sympathy towards Lucy, poured them both a drink, and wished her a safe journey. Then, they covered everyone's faces and began the transfer. Lucy asked if they would sell the product, to which he replied that it was their new business model. At the conference, the professor went on to explain that life seems to have the purpose of gaining time, and that each cell seeks to achieve this in two ways: by attaining immortality or by reproducing. In an unfavorable environment, the cell chooses to maintain itself and survive. In a favorable one, it chooses to reproduce. This principle is replicated in nature. Animals and humans tend to produce when conditions are good, just as Maslow's hierarchy of needs describes. We first need certain basic needs to be met before we can continue with the following levels, the last being self-actualization. When an organism dies, the information in its cells is transmitted to others, perpetuating knowledge that is earned by the passage of time. Lucy, still with her face covered, was taken to another location. She tried to devise a plan, repeating to herself that she had to remain calm until she boarded the flight and left. She was taken to a room where a group of men chained her to a wall. One of them tried to touch her inappropriately, but Lucy reacted forcefully, injuring his finger. The man, with a perverse expression, brought the blood to his mouth and then began to beat her, throwing her to the ground and kicking her in the stomach. Another man intervened, dragging him out of the room and leaving Lucy locked inside. Badly injured, she felt the bag on her stomach open, allowing some of the contents of the package to enter Lucy's bloodstream. The substance began to be absorbed rapidly, causing uncontrollable tremors. Her skin and eyes changed as tiny particles seemed to course through her like currents of energy. The pain intensified until it caused convulsions. Lucy rose from the ground, levitating uncontrollably. We see her body convulse in a cell as gravity seems to reverse. This moment metaphorically suggests that Lucy has broken free from the bonds of the mundane, the gravity that binds us to Earth, beginning her ascent to a higher plane. The electric blue of CPH4 evokes the unknown and the futuristic, while at the same time it could be associated with mental clarity and transcendence, in contrast to earthy colors like the red that connects us with blood, earth, and the animal. Visually, the film emphasizes this fundamental moment. The seed of Lucy's transformation is shown within her body as bluish granules dispersing, triggering a chain reaction that will soon transcend the psychological. We are literally witnessing the injection of liquid divinity into the human body, a transfusion of light that will transform an ordinary woman into something beyond the human realm. At that moment, Lucy reached 20% of the brain capacity. In the university lecture, the professor presented his students with an intriguing hypothesis. What would happen if humans could access 20% of their brain? Or, as we mentioned before, 20% state of consciousness. He stated, in the first stage, they would allow full control of all the body's functions, temperature, heart rate, metabolism, even the immune system. The professor explained that the human body contains more internal connections than there are stars in the galaxy, and that each individual stores an immense volume of information to which they can barely access. He pointed out that our mind functions like a gigantic network of electrical impulses that constantly interact. A student asked what would happen after reaching 20% of brain capacity. He replied that perhaps one could influence and control other people like illusionists, although this would only be possible beyond 40%. He then spoke of controlling matter, something he acknowledged was in the realm of science fiction. Finally, someone asked, what would happen if 100% brain capacity were utilized? The professor admitted he had no idea. Perhaps the mind would reach such a high level that we couldn't even imagine it. Elsewhere, Lucy's eyes snapped open. For a moment, a fluorescent blue glow illuminated her pupils, but she immediately returned to her normal expression, remaining calm. She sat, observing her surroundings. Notice that when CPH4 infiltrates Lucy's body, the first thing that changes isn't her physical strength. What changes first is her mindset. One of the men guarding her entered the room and emptied the contents of his bag onto the table, a gun and some keys. He stared at her with bad intentions, moving closer as if to touch her. Lucy, calculating every move, opened her legs. She knows her beauty is a cheese in the mousetrap. She grabbed him, pushed him against the wall, and with a swift motion removed his belt. She used it to hook the table, bring the gun within reach, and shoot him without hesitation. Prey would have grabbed the keys first and escaped. But by grabbing the weapon first, we realize that she's gone from prey to hunter. As she gains mental clarity, Lucy enters a kind of deep, meditative calm. She ceases to feel anguish over the terrifying situation she was in, and acts with unwavering certainty and confidence. Instead of the initial panic, she displays the trust and detachment of someone who perceives a greater order behind the immediate chaos. She moved towards another room where other captors were. She eliminated them with precise shots, without hesitation. Then, she calmly explored the place, found some food, and sat down to eat as if nothing happened. This contrasts sharply with Lucy, who would get dizzy just from seeing blood. It was then that she noticed her clothes were soaked with blood. She discovered that she has been shot in the shoulder. She extracted the bullet with surgical precision and without showing the slightest sign of pain. She searched a nearby warehouse, collecting several weapons and put them in a bag. She covered her body to disguise her appearance and went outside. There, she found herself in a hostile neighborhood, an environment teeming with illegal business and armed people. The driver took her through the streets, eyeing her suspiciously in the rearview mirror. Lucy, concentrating, discovered she could focus her attention on distant conversations and select which one to listen to, as if turning into a mental radio station, like she was a dolphin. They arrived at the entrance of the hospital. Before getting out, she told the driver to wait for her. She entered without hesitation, walking down cold, white corridors to the operating room area. She opened the door to one of the operating rooms, ignoring the staff's protests. On the walls, she saw the CT scans of the patient lying on the operating table, and without hesitation, she shot him in the head. She explained in a clinical tone that the man had an inoperable tumor that had invaded his brain, cortex, and spinal cord. Pointing her gun at everyone, she revealed that she herself had a bag of drugs inserted in her stomach, which had ruptured. She demanded that it be removed immediately. A nurse, unable to bear the tension, fainted. The surgeon, nervous, began to examine her. Lucy, her voice steady, made a phone call during the preparation and ordered that she not be given anesthesia, assuring them that she didn't need it. The call was to her mother, who was visibly happy to hear from her. Lucy remarks, "I no longer feel pain or fear or desire. It's as if everything that makes us human is fading away." This phrase marks her ego, death. Basic emotions and personal attachments dissolve as her mind embraces a cosmic perspective. In a spiritual tradition, ego, disillusion, is a crucial step towards enlightenment. It represents transcending limited identity to merge with something vaster. Lucy goes through the process dramatically. We see her become increasingly impassive and emotionally distant, yet simultaneously connected to everything. She even says tearfully in this call to her mother, "I remember the taste of your milk. I can recall every emotion of my life. I feel everything simultaneously," referencing memories from as far as back as she was a baby. That scene suggests that her consciousness expands not only outward but also inward, encompassing her entire life story in a single instant of understanding. It is an intimate moment in which Lucy, still losing her individual self, experiences universal empathy. She literally feels everything alive and lived at once, a state reminiscent of the enlightenment described by mystics, the unity with the whole. Lucy, not wanting to alarm her father, said she simply wanted to tell her mother she loved her and thanked her for raising her. The mother, touched, returned to the affection without fully understanding what was happening. Meanwhile, the surgeon was extracting 500 grams of substance from Lucy's abdomen. Lucy, showing no pain, asked how long it would take to leave her body. The doctor, surprised, explained that it was CPH4, a substance women produce naturally only during the 6th week of pregnancy in a minuscule quantities to give the fetus the energy needed for bone formation. He compared its potence to that of a miniature atomic bomb. He had heard of attempts to synthesize it, but no one was successful. If Lucy had absorbed such a quantity, it was a miracle she was still alive. She concluded with cold logic that her time was limited. Lucy acquires an almost unnatural calm. Sounds are amplified and slowed down around her as if we're perceiving reality with an expanded sense. In fact, Lucy declares at the point, "I hear everything. The air, the space, the vibrations of the earth. I feel every heartbeat and perceive even the blood in my veins," describing a hypersensitivity worthy of a highly involved being. Ironically, her phone call to her mother is the most human moment in the film, but is also the last. Upon leaving the hospital, she began to perceive the world in a completely different way. She could see energy flowing through all things, the vibrations of matter, and patterns invisible to any other human being. She immediately went to a luxurious spa where Mr. Yang was getting a tattoo. Her silent interest caused the tattoo artist to flee in terror. Without warning, Lucy slipped 2 razor blades into Yang's hands, immobilizing him. She calmly spoke to him about the pain involved in learning, comparing it to the pain of growing bones in childhood. She explained that nothing mattered to her now. She also claimed to have complete access to his mind and to understand human nature and the obstacle people place upon themselves. Primal emotions that she no longer feels, such as pain, fear, and desire, a fundamental step towards enlightenment in virtually all spiritual traditions. Essential theme in Rumi's poetry regarding the elimination of the false self, the ego, is that you must remove the artificial barriers you have created to discover your true essence. One of his phrases, he says, "Burn away the darkness of my false self, and then my true self will shine like sunlight." Rumi emphasizes that the true self is hidden underneath layers of ego, conditioning, and worldly identity. By letting go of these, falling in love with the divine, engaging in silence, and removing the false ego, you find the true self that was already there. She asked him for the information about the whereabouts of the other cargo ships transporting substance, as she wanted to recover the rest of the substance for purpose she did not disclose. Yang refused to answer, but she placed her thumb and using telekinesis explored his memories. Clear images appeared in her mind, plane tickets to Berlin, Paris, Rome, and in her own case, England. Afterward, she returned to her apartment, where her roommates were complaining about failed interviews because she didn't speak Chinese, and excitedly mentioned that she had a date with a man. Lucy, without even looking at her, searched the internet for information about her condition. She could already read through patterns and predict words before they were spoken. So she told her friend, before she could even mention it, where the man had taken her, and when questioning about her own date, she replied coldly that Richard had died. In her online research, Lucy found an article by a scientist Samuel Norman, an expert on the potential of the human brain. She called him immediately. From his hotel room, Norman listened in disbelief as the woman claimed to have read all of his work, 6,734 pages, which she could recite from memory word for word. He thought it was a student's cruel prank, but at that moment the television in the room turned on by itself, showing Lucy on camera, sitting in front of a neutral background. She commented that his theory was basic but correct. She explained that her cells were reproducing at millions per second and that she had no more than 24 hours to live. She claimed to have absorbed a large dose of synthetic CPH4 and was using 28% of her brain capacity. According to what he himself had written, at 20%, the mind expands and breaks down the barriers that limit understanding and access to information. Norman, surprised, asked if she could control her metabolism. Lucy replied that she could, and that she could also manipulate the bodies of others, as well as influence basic electrical and magnetic waves such as those from televisions, radios, and telephones. She added that she no longer felt pain, fear, or desire. Everything that made her human had disappeared. In its place, her knowledge of quantum physics, applied mathematics, and cell biology was growing without limit. She confessed that she did not know what to do with such information. Norman, without definitive answers, told her that the essence of life has always been to pass on what one has learned. If she wanted advice, she should share that knowledge. She told him that she'd be home in 12 hours. She hung up, without even giving a chance to reply, leaving him perplexed by the certainty of her words. Her roommate, fresh out of the shower, asked if she was leaving already. Lucy handed her some documents. When the puzzled young woman asked what they were, she received a direct answer. It was a prescription. Her surprise grew when she asked how Lucy had written everything in Chinese. She had learned the language just an hour before. In a firm, clinical tone, Lucy warned her that her kidneys and liver were failing, and that she needed to change her lifestyle immediately. The young woman is left frozen, unable to fully comprehend what she had just heard. Remember when we talked about the mouse and the cheese trap? It seems that the marketing for this movie when it came out led us to believe that Scarlett Johansson, an incredible action scene, was the cheese, when the real trap was that we wanted to explain a map of human transcendence, as we will see. A warning was being broadcast on Chinese news. A dangerous woman had escaped from the hospital wearing only a hospital gown. Lucy, now unrecognizable, wore an elegant black dress, high heels, and sunglasses. She had changed her hairstyles and her hair color to suit her needs to avoid being recognized. She is already at the point where she controls matter so well, even at a cellular level. From her phone, she contacted the French police, requesting to speak with an investigator. She claimed to have information about a drug trafficking network and demanded that the call be directed to Agent Pierre Del Rio. When Pierre answered, Lucy didn't reveal her name. Instead, she asked him to listen to her and follow instructions precisely. Inexplicably, she began to describe his exact location, the objects on his desk, the red pen next to his hand. She asked him to take it and write down what she dictated Pierre. Surprised by the precision of the details, decides to play along. Lucy gave him information about 3 individuals who would be attempting to enter Europe with 1 kilogram of substance each, specifying that the substance was dangerous and extremely potent. At the airport, Lucy handed over the ticket and documents. A drug-sniffling dog approached her, but after looking at her, it backed away in fear, as if it's sensing something unusual. Meanwhile, she sent Pierre a complete file with photos and information on the suspect that they could be arrested before boarding the flights. Thanks to that information, the operation was a success, and the 3 men were arrested without incident. The cartel supervisors, noticing the arrest of their men, informed Yang. Lucy boarded a flight to Paris, intending to meet with Pierre and Dr. Norman. During the flight, she worked on 2 computers simultaneously, processing music and decoding data at a speed that exceeds any human limit. A flight attendant, seeing her so focused, asked her to turn off the devices as a matter of protocol. Without taking her eyes off the screen, Lucy told us she needed to clean her nose. The woman, confused at first, noticed it was bleeding and quickly left. Lucy ordered a glass of champagne. She had already reached 40% of her brain capacity. As she took the first sip, she noticed a tooth at the bottom of the glass. She brought her hand to her mouth and felt others begin to fall out. Her skin and muscles seemed to disintegrate, transforming into an unstable substance. As if her body was dissolving, she stood up to go to the restroom, walking erratically, with spasmodic movements and almost uncontrollable strength. The flight attendants tried to stop her, asking her to return to her seat and fasten her seatbelt. However, the disintegration process continued, and Lucy realized she couldn't stop it. Aware that her only option was to stabilize herself, she opened the bag containing the rest of CPH4 and consumed it all at once. Outside, a flight attendant banged on the bathroom door, oblivious to the metamorphosis unfolding inside. This scene seems to show us how, after mastering the material world, she's becoming digital frost that will help her reach dimensions beyond material. And it also tells us how the human vessel is inadequate to contain the divine. To become everything, one must cease to be someone. Lucy confesses that desire has vanished from her experience. Without desire, there is no drive. Without drive, there is no recognizable human life. She's becoming something that observes existence from the outside, cold and objective like interstellar space. But there's another entirely different interpretation, one that leads us into much brighter territories. In the ancient Gnostic tradition, it proposes that the material world is an imperfect creation of an incompetent or outright evil being, and that human beings possess an inner divine spark, coming from a true and superior God who seeks to return to his origin. Sparks that the movie shows when Lucy is starting to see everything more clear. This means true divinity is pure spirit. Salvation consists of awakening the inner divine spark to escape the bonds of matter and the flesh to reunite with the supreme consciousness. Her journey is an ascent from the material to the spiritual. When the plane landed in Paris, Pierre received a call confirming Lucy's arrival in the city. She, meanwhile, awoke in a hospital room. Her body was regenerated and her system stable, though her brain capacity had increased to 50%, granting her even more extraordinary abilities and perceptions. She dressed quickly and left the room with determined stride toward the next step of her plan. They all approached cautiously, but those who pointed their weapons at her neutralized in seconds and rendered unconscious. Lucy left to Pierre, explaining that she needed to speak with him, saying that he didn't lower his weapon. She disassembled the mechanism and dropped the bullets. Pierre realized she wasn't an ordinary threat and agreed to talk. Lucy asked if the packages were in his custody. Pierre said they were safe in Paris, but she insisted they would be safer with her. Meanwhile, the criminals entered a hospital to have the bags of the substance they were carrying removed. Persian police were already handling the case, while Yang's organization closely monitored events to report back to their leader. Pierre admitted that in his career as a detective, he had never seen anything like what she had done, and that she had frightened him. Lucy replied that she wouldn't worry. Meanwhile, she was picking up ambient waves as if they were radio signals. She adjusted the vehicle's dial and listened to Yang Man speaking in Chinese as he followed him. Lucy asked to take the wheel. Pierre refused, having trouble driving an official vehicle, but she telekinetically moved him to the passenger seat, and he didn't object again out of fear. At that moment, Yang's man burst into the room where the suspects were and killed the officers, leaving them alone with the prisoners. On the streets of Paris, Lucy was driving at a high speed. She said it was her first time driving. To save time, she started driving the wrong way, causing accidents and forcing pedestrians out of the way. Pierre offered to radio them to let them go, but without stopping, she lowered the mental barriers on the street and drove through. She raised them again, blocking the patrol cars and causing chaos in the market. Everywhere, Young's men were removing body bags from their comrades. 2 survived, but 1 tried to escape and was executed. Lucy arrived at the moment. The mobster approached her with hostile attitude, but Lucy, with 60% of his capacity open, created an invisible barrier that stopped him. With a gesture, she levitated all her weapons and fixed them to the ceiling. When they tried to attack her using brute force, they too became stuck up there. She approached the man with the briefcase, immobilized him, and snatched it away, handing it to Pierre while she removed the remaining packages from the bodies. Then she signaled to the cop to leave. Pierre hesitated, believing he just would be useless, so she kissed him, saying that he would serve as a reminder. Lucy at this point knows that she's about to emerge into the whole, and there will be no proof that she was ever there, but this kiss will serve as a reminder. Meanwhile, the professor meets with a scientist in a university laboratory, received a call from Lucy informing that she was in Paris. When she mentioned that she was at a university, she appeared at the door, surprising everyone. Yang was preparing an ambush, but she sensed it first. So she asked Pierre to close the door to buy time and warned him that a group of men was about to arrive. Outside, the police had also arrived at university while Yang's team readied their weapons. One of the professors asked her how she obtained so much information. Lucy explained that it was due to electrical impulses. Every cell communicates with others, exchanging millions of bits per second. These cellular networks form matter. As she spoke, she demonstrated how she could modify her hand, multiply it, deform it, and return it to its normal shape, explaining that for her, all these actions were the same. Norman then asked if neither humans nor mathematical laws were the unit of measurement and wants to know what governed existence. Lucy replied that the true measure was time. She explained that a car accelerating until it disappears still existed thanks to time, because without it, nothing could exist. Young mans burst in, armed, advancing unopposed, and firing indiscriminately. Pierre reported that they wouldn't be able to hold them off for long. Lucy, unfazed, announced that her moment had arrived. They opened a briefcase containing CPH4 and placed a camera inside to document the process. Then they dissolved the contents to inject intravenously. Norman, worried, warned her she shouldn't survive such a dose, but Lucy stated that her goal was to reach 100% of her brain capacity, which meant forcing cells to the nuclei. Lucy began receiving the massive dose and an intense firefight erupted, leaving numerous casualties. Pierre was wounded but held on to buy Lucy time. The substance triggered an immediate reaction. A flash interrupted from her mouth as her body expanded and connected with surrounding machinery and energy. Reaching 80% capacity, the laboratory vanished before her, replaced by a white void in which she materialized a computer of unknown technology, into which she poured her knowledge and very essence. Outside, the battle raged on. A grenade destroyed the laboratory entrance, sending Lucy traveling through different timelines, witnessing the history of humanity since the creation of Earth. Lucy understands that time is what prevents everything from happening simultaneously. It is the dimension that separates events and allows for individuality. Upon reaching 100%, she transcends even the dimension. We see that New York City resides centuries after centuries before her eyes. Skyscrapers crumble, ancient buildings appear, then forests, then indigenous people, then prehistory. This vivid imagery tells us that for Lucy, time has become navigatable, a dimension as accessible as the three spatial dimensions. The sequence, where Lucy travels to the initial instance of the universe and witnesses the Big Bang, is practically a visual representation of the concept of returning to the Tao or Nirvana as a reabsorption into the cosmos. Her journey back in time, where she encounters the first Lucy of prehistory, a direct reference to Michelangelo's creation of Adam, suggests that she has closed the circle of human evolution. She has reached the point where individual consciousness recognizes itself as a universal consciousness, where the boundaries of itself dissolve into vastness of the whole. At the moment of contact between the two Lucys, evolution is complete. Primitive humanity touches transcendent humanity, closing a cosmic circle that began millions of years ago. It is the perfect serpent biting its own tail, the eternal return where the end of humanity and the beginning of meet at the point outside of time. Lucy has completed the great alchemical work, the transmutation of limited consciousness into infinite knowledge. Yang appeared in front of her, pointing a gun at her. Upon reaching 100% capacity, she vanished. He fired, but the chair remained empty. The woman's clothes fell to the floor, the bewildered monster demanding to know where she was, convinced it was a hoax, until Pierre shot him several times, killing him. The computer extended an arm, handed Norman a USB drive, which he accepted in astonishment. Immediately afterward, it disintegrated. Pierre, perplexed, wondered where Lucy was, receiving a clear message on his phone. I am everywhere. Lucy has transcended physical form to become pure omnipresence. She is no longer a person, but a functioning of the universe itself. Lucy transcended beyond itself, beyond the material. She dissolved and became everything and nothing. The total evolution of consciousness is what dissolves and becomes everything.